was in Iceland for 9 days and I didn't see the Northern Lights once. I booked a Northern Lights trip to Norway and they didn't come out. Do you know how many times I hear stories like these? You don't want this, do you? Seeing the Northern Lights is not for the faint-hearted. You can spend night after night hanging out in the dark and the cold to be rewarded with nothing. Mother Nature can be stone cold like that. I've seen the Northern Lights 3 times out of 3 trips and catching them in Rovaniemi in Finnish Lapland, Iceland and Tromsø in Norway, and it wasn't an accident. Let me just say, I'm a geek and seeing the Northern Lights was on the first bucket list I wrote when I was 9, so you know that I went in deep for the research. In this video, I'm going to share exactly what you need to know to maximise your chance of successfully seeing the Northern Lights too. I've broken it down into 3 sections. 1, what you need to know before you book your trip to see the Northern Lights, the different ways you can see the Northern Lights, and last but definitely not least, lots of must-know tips for maximising your chances of seeing the Northern Lights while you're actually on your travels. Side note, never have I been more proud than on this trip to Tromsø, because the conditions were so less than perfect that it took a lot of guile and planning to make that shiz happen, and make it happen I did. So of course I'm going to share that knowledge with you too. I'm Juliana from the Discoveries of. Join me on this adventure to see the Aurora Borealis, and let's go. Let's kick things off with the things you need to know before you book your trip. Where to see the Northern Lights? The name is a bit of a giveaway. If you want to see the Northern Lights, you have to go to northerly destinations. That's because much of the molecular activity that causes the Northern Lights happens at the Earth's magnetic poles, with the result that the Arctic and the zones in close proximity to it are the best places to search for the aurora. Don't go too far north though. The so-called Northern Lights belt, or the Aurora zone, is a region between 65 and 72 degrees latitude where the Northern Lights will usually show up more frequently than in other areas. Head further north than that and your chances of seeing the Northern Lights actually diminishes a bit. So that's the where, but what about when's the best time to see the Northern Lights? Broadly, the Northern Lights viewing season runs from the end of September towards the end of March. Although technically the Northern Lights actually happen all year, but outside of these months, the skies aren't really dark enough to see them. So I'm asking you, when is the best time to see the Northern Lights? Did you guess December? I would be surprised if you did. After all, you need darkness to see the Northern Lights, and what is darker than the sky and everyone's souls in December? That's not true. This might come as a bit of a surprise, but the absolute best time to see the Northern Lights are late September and late March, and I'm going to get into that. Hear me out. When I said I was travelling to Iceland and hoping to see the aurora in September, a lot of people looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah, sure,
was the most common response, with a few,
well, there's lots to see in Iceland anyway.
Translation, it's not happening, lady, but I don't want to crush your hopes. You see, many people think that the Northern Lights only come out in the winter months, but that is not true. Do away with that fallacy right now. The first reason why September and March are the best months to see the Northern Lights is that the displays of the Aurora Borealis tend to be particularly strong during the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, which occur in March and September respectively. Don't believe me? I've got receipts. During my Iceland trip, I also spent a lot of time talking to Hotel Ranger's in-house astronomer, Sverre Helgi. What a job. And he agreed. Boom. This man spends most nights for 3/4 of the year staring at Iceland's night skies. We should probably listen to him. But why are the spring and autumn equinoxes particularly good times to go aurora hunting? I won't get too technical because I'm not an astrophysicist, and I suspect that you're just trying to plan your trip and not become an expert in the aurora. But essentially, geomagnetic activity is particularly high during the equinoxes. If geomagnetic storms equate to increased aurora activity, then you can see why these are better months to go. Was it an accident that I just so happened to be in Iceland during the autumn equinox and in Rovaniemi during the spring equinox? No, it most certainly wasn't. Did I see mad geomagnetic storms during both trips? Yes, I did. It's also warmer in September and March, and there tends to be fewer clouds, which are the enemy of Northern Lights viewing during those months, so you're winning all round. Now that we've covered what you need to know before you book, let's talk about the mechanics of how to see the Northern Lights on your trip. I'm going to talk about 3 main options here. One is booking onto a tour versus doing it independently, and the third is staying in a Northern Lights hotel. I'm also going to run through the pros and cons of each. Your first option is to book onto a Northern Lights tour. Here comes the million-dollar question: to tour or not to tour? First up, the pros. Booking a tour can significantly up your chances of seeing the Aurora Borealis. Why? Local guides like the Aurora Whisperers. They know the ins and the outs, the when and the where of spotting them. Plus, they've got access to real-time data and tons of experience on their side. Another big win, convenience. Tours often include transportation, meaning you're not left navigating icy roads or remote areas on your own. And let's not forget about the safety net this provides, especially in unfamiliar and wintry terrains. Now let's talk tech. Many tours come equipped with professional photography gear to capture that perfect shot of the aurora, something that your smartphone might struggle with. But it's not all northern lights and rainbows. One of the cons, the cost. Tours can be quite pricey, but remember you're paying for expertise, transport, and sometimes even warm gear and snacks. And while we're on the topic of downsides, there is the crowd factor. Popular spots can get busy, and sharing your moment with dozens of others or even quite a few others might not be the serene experience that you pictured. There are even specialist tours like snowmobiling and dog sledding and Northern Lights spotting combined. You can also try and see the lights independently. You fancy yourself as more of a lone wolf, the master of your own Aurora quest? Yeah, me too. I mentioned that I've published a video where I chart the absolute wild ride that is trying to hunt out the Northern Lights when the condition is kind of tough in this video, but I would recommend flying solo. I absolutely would. There's something undeniably magical about hiring a car, plotting your own course in pursuit of this celestial spectacle where there will be sweet highs and the inevitable lows of this journey. But this is what you need to know. First, the pros. The biggest plus, flexibility. Want to chase every clear night sky? That's your call. Fancy waiting out in the cold for the perfect shot? Go for it. The adventure is yours to design. And let's talk spontaneity. With your own set of wheels, you can pivot with the weather, moving to clearer skies at a moment's notice. But it's not all smooth driving. The cons include navigating unfamiliar icy roads. This can be a challenge, especially in the remote darkness of prime Aurora territories. Should you book into a Northern Lights hotel? Booking a stay at a Northern Lights hotel, particularly those offering glass cabins or igloos, presents a unique and luxurious way to experience the Aurora Borealis. These accommodations are designed with the Aurora chaser in mind, offering unparalleled comfort and views. Imagine lying in your cozy bed, shielded from the crisp Arctic air, gazing up through a clear glass ceiling as the Northern Lights perform their ethereal dance across the sky above your head. I'm going to do a quick run through of the pros and cons of opting for a Northern Lights hotel on your trip and talk you through 3 hotels that I have personally stayed in. I won't lie, Northern Lights hotels do offer an unmatched viewing comfort. You can watch the Northern Lights from the warmth of your bed, making it the ideal option for those who prefer not to brave the cold night air for hours on end. They're also a pretty unique experience, aren't they? Staying in a glass cabin or igloo is a unique experience in and of itself. Then there's the location. These hotels are typically located in areas with minimal light pollution and optimum conditions for Northern Lights viewing, maximising your chances of witnessing the spectacle without any effort. There are cons though, the first one being the cost. These hotels do come with a high price tag. They're also very popular and often book up quickly, especially during peak Aurora viewing season. Planning and booking well in advance is crucial to secure a spot. Then there's the chance that you might not see the lights at all. Despite the perfect setup, the Northern Lights are a natural phenomenon and thus unpredictable. Your experience is still at the mercy of the weather conditions, and there's always a chance that cloud cover or low solar activity will hinder your view even in the most idyllic location. Era near Tromsø in Norway is a great option for amazing Northern Lights, away from the bright lights of the city in a beautiful lakefront location. I stayed in one of the glass Aurora cabins and would very much recommend. Your bed is right beneath a glass roof, so when the lights are out, is very cool. Same for a puka near Rovaniemi in Finland. During my last visit in Finland, I stayed in a puka and I absolutely loved it. I recommend the Lappish Kami suite, a glass top dome filled with cozy furnishings. The beds here were uber comfortable, which I have to say was much needed after a day of snowmobiling. There's also Hotel Ranga in Iceland. Hotel Ranga is well known as one of Iceland's best Northern Lights hotels, thanks to the combination of a relatively remote but easily accessible position in the south of the country and stellar 5-star accommodation. Now, it doesn't have Aurora cabins, but it does have a private hotel observatory and Northern Lights calls, where you simply tap the button on your in-room phone before you go to bed at night and they'll wake you up if the Northern Lights come out to play. That totally beats standing for hours in the cold or sitting in a coach ride. All right, tips for maximising your chances of seeing the Northern Lights during your trip. First up, if you've planned your trip right, you're not actually chasing the Northern Lights, you are chasing clear skies. Now, I imagine that when it comes to chasing the Northern Lights, you're thinking of yourself as a hunter pursuing the elusive glow across the Arctic skies. But the reality is that the real quest isn't necessarily for the lights themselves, but for the clearest and the most unobstructed view of the sky. The distinction is really crucial here because even the most spectacular display of the aurora can be totally concealed by a blanket of clouds. Aurora takes place high above the Earth's surface and clouds are lower down, so a blanket of clouds will act as a curtain and obscure the Northern Lights. You should also get to grips with the KP index. The KP index measures the level of geomagnetic activity. Remember, that's what causes the Northern Lights. It runs from 0 to 9, and here is a super brief summary of what the numbers mean. So 0 to 2, the aurora is far north, quite dim and not very active. 3 to 5, the aurora moves further from the poles, is brighter and there's more motion and formations. If you're in the right place, this can look really great. 6 to 7, the aurora moves further from the poles and is quite bright and very active. And 8 to 9, the aurora moves even further towards the equator and it will be very bright and very active. And this is when you can kind of see it even in London. So you will need these apps. While you might strike lucky and walk out of your hotel and see the lights, there are many nights where a little bit of planning goes a really long way. And I'm going to tell you about 2 apps that will transform your Northern Lights chase. You can do some planning with these apps before your trip, but realistically you'll need to check these each evening before you head out to really maximise your chances and make sure that you're working with the most accurate information. The first one is Aurora. I use the Aurora app. It's easy to understand and navigate with its real-time Northern Lights tracker. When you open the app, there's a nice summary block showing the KP index for your immediate location, but that's not really that useful if you're trying to plan out your evening. Instead, look at the Aurora map, which shows where the highest probabilities for seeing the Northern Lights currently are. Wait until they're close before you head out, and this should save you some unnecessary waiting in the cold. There's also a handy forecast tab that shows the viewing probability in your location or chosen location for the next 30 minutes, as well as the cloud coverage forecast for the night. Do bear in mind that the app is just a forecast, not facts. Like a weather forecast, they don't always get it right. So during my Iceland stay, the night both the app and the Met's Aurora forecast originally predicted to have the lowest KP, which was the Friday, actually turned into a geomagnetic storm with a KP of 8, which was spectacular to look at, and a full display that totally lit up the sky. The other app I would recommend getting is Windy. You really need the paid version of the app for this, but when you think about how much you're not spending on a tour, it puts the $17.99 annual fee into relief. The name's actually a bit misleading. We don't really care about the wind. What it's excellent for is forecasting the cloud cover at a given location days in advance. Simply follow the steps I'm showing you on screen right now, and you can see the level of cloud forecast for a specific location on an hourly basis, and you can change the location simply by moving the pin on the map. This was basically the holy grail in Tromsø that allowed me to find a spot in Olduvik that wasn't too cloudy when the rest of the region was covered, and I mean covered, in a thick blanket of cloud, and capture this time lapse. Put your faith in Windy, people. Amen. Then let's talk about choosing your location. So seeing the Northern Lights anywhere is great, but choosing a great location can really amplify the experience, particularly if you're planning to photograph. So first and foremost, seek out locations that offer an unobstructed view of the sky. Vast open spaces away from light pollution or city are your best options here. Then consider the direction of the open sky in relation to the expected position of the aurora. In many locations within the auroral belt, the lights commonly appear in the northern horizon, so a spot with a clear northern view can increase your viewing potential, although this matters less during particularly strong showings when basically they fill up the night sky. While the aurora itself is undeniably the star of the show, the presence of a butte landscape in the foreground can really transform your viewing into a scene straight out of a dream. Think of the silhouetted outlines of mountains, the serene expanse of a frozen lake, or the rugged charm of a remote forest. Local blogs and Instagram can be great for helping you find cool locations here. Then you should start hunting on your first night. You should note that the Northern Lights either appear or they do not. Even when the conditions may look like they're absolutely perfect, they might still decide to miss the party. Spending most nights or every night of your trip on the hunt will greatly improve your chances of catching them. You should also book lots of fun activities for your trip, so do not plan your whole trip around seeing the Northern Lights, because if you do, you might just come away disappointed by factors that are well outside of your control. Instead, fill your itinerary with plenty of fun winter activities. Why not visit an ice or a snow hotel? How about dog sledding with some adorable huskies, or going on an epic snowmobile ride bombing across the frozen tundra? Most Northern Lights destinations are real life winter wonderlands. It would be a real shame for you to miss out on all the fun that you can have whilst waiting for those pesky aurora. Avoid a full moon if you can. The moon is a natural light source in the sky, and the Northern Lights don't really love competition. Anything over waxing, crescent, or first quarter moon will interfere to some degree with seeing the lights. But that said, do not stress if your trip does coincide with a full moon. You can check what time the moon rises and sets and plan your Northern Lights viewing excursions outside of that. You should also prepare for an all-nighter. The sun sets earlier in the winter in vast areas of Northern Europe, which is fantastic, seeing as it gives you a lot longer to see the Northern Lights. That said, they are most likely to show in the darkest and coldest parts of the night. Of course they are. The busiest hours aurora-wise are from 11 PM to 2 AM. Of course, you might be lucky and catch them early, but the best views are often late at night. You should also dress warmly, so ensure that you have enough warm clothes and insulating layers to keep you from freezing. Boots are also essential, as you will be walking a lot or just standing in one place. And then be patient. There's no set schedule for when the lights will appear. You may have to wait a while, or you might be lucky and see them right after the sun goes down. Just allow yourself some time to enjoy the surroundings. The lights will hopefully come out, but you do have to be patient. Jesus, that turned into an absolute monster, didn't it? Now you're armed and equipped to plan your Northern Lights adventure. Got any questions? Drop them below and subscribe for more nerdy ass practical travel tips for your trips. I'm Juliana from the Discoveries of. Keep exploring, and who knows, the next light show could be the one you're dreaming of. Oh my god.
It's incredible. Look at it behind you as well.
Oh my god.
Turn the camera around.